The Rattrap, book Flamingo, part 2, page number 35. It was late in December, darkness was already descending over the forest. This increased the danger and increased also his gloom and despair. Finally, he saw no way out and he sank down on the ground, tired to death, thinking that his last moment had come. But just as he laid his head on the ground, he heard a sound, a hard, regular thumping. There was no doubt as to what that was. He raised himself. Those are the hammer strokes from an iron mill, he thought. There must be people nearby. He summoned all his strength, got up, and staggered in the direction of the sound. So, what happened? So, fortunately enough, the peddler, he heard the sound of the hammer strokes from an iron mill. So, following the sound, now he is going to reach the the mill. Let's see. So, the Ramjo's iron works, which are now closed down, were not so long ago a large plant with smelter, rolling mill, and forge. In the summertime, long lines of heavily loaded barge and screws slide down the canal which led to a large inland lake, and in the winter time the roads near the mill were black from all the coal dust which shifted from which sifted down from the big charcoal crates during one of the long dark evenings just before Christmas. The master smith and his helpers sat in the dark forge near the furnace waiting for the pig iron, which had been put in the fire to be ready to put on the anvil. Every now and then one of them got up to stir the glowing mass with a long iron bar, returning in a few moments dripping with perspiration, though, as was the custom, he wore nothing but a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. So, here we can see that what happened. So at all the time there were many sounds to be heard in the forge. The big bellows groaned and the burning coal cracked. The fire boy shoveled charcoal into the maw of the furnace. With a great deal of clatter outside roared the waterfall, and a sharp north wind whipped the rain against the brick tiled roof. It was probably on account of all this noise that the blacksmith did not notice that a man had opened the gate and entered the forge until he stood close up to the furnace. Surely it was nothing unusual for poor vagabonds without any better shelter for the night to be attracted to the forge by the glow of light which escaped through the sooty panes, and to come in to warm themselves in front of the fire. The blacksmith glanced only casually and indifferently at the intruder. He looked the way people of this type usually did, with a long beard, dirty, ragged, and with a bunch of rat traps dangling on his chest. He asked permission to stay, and the blacksmith nodded a haughty consent without honoring him with a single word. The tramp did not say anything either. He had not come there to talk but only to warm himself and sleep. So that means what happened? So here, when the peddler when he heard the sound of the hammer strokes from the iron mill, following the sound, he went to the Ramjo's iron works, and he slept near the furnace. In those days, the Ramjo's iron mill was owned by a very prominent ironmaster whose greatest ambition was to ship out good iron to the market. He watched both night and day to see that the work was done as well as possible, and at this very moment he came into the forge on one of his nightly rounds of inspection. Naturally, the first thing he saw was a tall ragamuffin who had eased his way too close to the furnace that steam rose from his wet rags. The ironmaster did not follow the example of the blacksmiths, who had hardly the need to look at the stranger. He walked close up to him, looked him over very carefully, then tore off his slouch hat to get a better view of his face. But of course, it is you, Nils Olof, he said. How you do look. The man with the rat traps had never before seen the ironmaster at Ramjo's and did not even know what his name was, but it occurred to him that if the fine gentleman thought he was an old acquaintance, he might perhaps throw him a couple of kroner. Therefore, he did not want to undeceive him all at once. So again, the rat trapper, he took a chance of giving his false identity so that he can get again few kroners from the will master. So what happened here? So the owner of the mill mistakes him for his to be his for his old acquaintance. So now let's see what is going to happen. The man with the rat traps had never seen him before. So yes. So what will happen now? Yes, God knows things have gone downhill with me, he said. You should not have resigned from the regiment, said the ironmaster. That was a mistake. If only I had still been in the service at the time, it never would have happened. Well, now of course you will come home with me to go along up to the manor house and be received by the owner like an old regimental comrade. That, however, did not please the tramp. No, I couldn't think of it, he said, looking quite alarmed. So, what happened here? So, the owner of the mill, invites the peddler to his house, and the peddler, he refuses. He thought of the 30 kroner. To go up to the manor house would be like throwing himself voluntarily into the lion's den. He only wanted a chance to sleep here in the forge and then sneak away as inconspicuously as possible. The ironmaster assumed that he felt embarrassed because of his miserable clothing. Please don't think that I have such a fine home that you cannot show yourself there. He said, Elizabeth is dead, as you may already have heard. My boys are abroad, and there is no one at home except my oldest daughter and myself. We were just saying that it was too bad we didn't have any company for Christmas. Now come along with me and help us make the Christmas food disappear a little faster. But the stranger said no and again no, and the ironmaster saw that he must give in. It looks as though Captain Von Stale preferred to stay with you tonight. Sturgeon Storm, he said to the master blacksmith, and turned on his heel. So as the ironmaster was requesting him again and again, and he denied. So now let's see what the man is going to do. But he laughed to himself as he went away, and the blacksmith, who knew him, understood very well that he had not said his last word. It was not more than half an hour before they heard the sound of carriage wheels outside the forge, and a new guest came in. But this time it was not the ironmaster. He had sent his daughter, apparently hoping that she would have better powers of persuasion than he himself. She entered, following by a valet carrying on his arm and a big fur coat. She was not at all pretty, but seemed modest and quite shy. In the forge, everything was just as it had been earlier in the evening. The master blacksmith and his apprentice still sat on their bench, and iron and charcoal still glowed in the furnace. The stranger had stretched himself out on the floor and lay with a piece of big pig iron under his head and his hat pulled down over his eyes. As soon as a young girl caught sight of him, she went up and lifted his hat. The man was evidently used to sleeping with one eye open. He jumped up abruptly and seemed to be quite frightened. My name is Edla Wilmanson, said the young girl. My father came home and said that you wanted to sleep here in the forge tonight, and then I asked permission to come and bring you home to us. I am so sorry, Captain, that you are having such a hard time. So here what happened, that we can understand that when the ironmaster's invitation was refused by the peddler, He had sent his daughter Edla Wilmanson to persuade the peddler to come along with her to their home and spend their Christmas Eve with them. Now let's see whether the peddler will agree or not. She looked at him compassionately with her heavy eyes, and then she noticed that the man was afraid. Either he had stolen something or else he had escaped from jail. So the behavior of the peddler was really strange. She thought and added quickly, "You may be sure, Captain, that you will be allowed to leave us just as freely as you came. Only please stay with us over Christmas Eve." She said this in such a friendly manner that the rat-trap peddler must have felt confidence in her. "It would never have occurred to me that you would bother with me yourself, miss," he said. "I will come at once." He accepted the fur coat which the valet handed him with a deep bow, threw it over his racks, and followed the young lady out to the carriage without granting the astonished blacksmiths so much as a glance. But while he was riding up to the manor house, he had evil forebodings. Why the devil did not take that fellow's money? He thought, "Now I am sitting in the trap and will never get out of it." So he is thinking himself. So what happened? So now let's see how he is going to be greeted by the Willmaster or by the Ironmaster. Next day was Christmas Eve, and when the Ironmaster came into the dining room for breakfast, he probably thought with satisfaction of his old regimental comrade whom he had run across so unexpectedly. "First of all, we must see to it that he gets a little flesh on his bones," he said to his daughter, who was busy at the table. "And then we must see that he gets something else to do than to run around the country selling rat traps." So the Ironmaster, he felt sorry for the person, and he thought of offering something good to him. It is next page number 39. "It is square that things have gone downhill with him as badly as that," said the daughter. "Last night I did not think there was anything about him to show that he had once been an educated man. There is no such sign of being educated. Education is not there. There is no sign like that." The girl thought. "You must have patience, my little girl," said the father. "As soon as he gets clean and dressed up, you will see something different. Last night he was naturally embarrassed. The tramp manners will fall away from him with the tramp clothes." Just as he saw this, the door opened and the stranger entered. Yes, now he was truly clean and well dressed. Who? The rat trapper. The valet had bathed him, cut his hair, and shaved him. Moreover, he was dressed in a good-looking suit of clothes which belonged to the Ironmaster. He wore a white shirt and a starched collar and whole shoes. But although his guest was now so well groomed, the Ironmaster did not seem pleased. He looked at him with puckered brow, and it was easy to understand that when he had seen the strange fellow in the uncertain reflection from the furnace, he might have made a mistake. But that now, when he stood there in broad daylight, it was impossible to mistake him for an old acquaintance. So he understood that the peddler he is not his old acquaintance. So when the peddler had was greeted, now let's see how he is going, when knowing the real identity also, that he is not his old acquaintance, how the Ironmaster is going to treat him. That is to be seen. "What does this mean?" he thundered. The stranger made no attempt to dissimulate. He saw at once that the splendor had come to an end. "It is not my fault, sir," he said. "I never pretended to be anything but a poor trader, and I pleaded and begged to be allowed to stay in the forge. But no harm has been done. Afterwards, I can put on my rags again and go away," the peddler said. "Well," said the Ironmaster, hesitating a little, "it was not quite honest either. You must admit that, and I should not be surprised if the sheriff would like to have something to say in the matter. The tramp took a step forward and struck the table with his fist. So, knowing his identity, still he was given a warm welcome that no problem, you can stay for the Christmas Eve.